Welcome to the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit. It is time for our weekly segment, The Week That Was, where we sort of wrap up the week here at Deadline Detroit, all the big news stories that we've been taking a look at, and I am joined once again by Alan Lengel and Nancy Derringer from Deadline. Welcome back to both of you. Appreciate it very much, and I'll tell you what. What a week.
What a week.
What a
Always.
week. What a
week. Yeah.
And we've got to start with the huge story, which, of course, is the release of the redacted Mueller report. The day yesterday, and I want to sort of start this with what happened yesterday. The report was not released.
I sat in the office behind me and I listened to your occasional exclamations as you read through it.
But I watched the Bill Barr press conference first.
Right.
That was at 9:30, and then of course the report wasn't released for another hour and a half later. Right. So as I said yesterday, I think I tweeted out, that Trump got a 2-hour head start yesterday.
Right.
Which is basically what happened. But the Bill Barr press conference, in which he said, hey, here's what you're going to get. You're going to see that there was no collusion. He said collusion a bunch of times. That's not even what was being looked at. They were looking at conspiracy.
Sure.
2, he basically said that there was no obstruction of justice. And so this was the narrative that was out there for a couple of hours, and Rod Rosenstein was standing behind him. And he just put this off like, this is no big deal. This is what was in there. Right. We actually got the report. It was quite a bit different than what Mr. Barr had portrayed.
Unbelievable.
Being there. For an attorney general, Alan, this was really unusual.
It's shameful. I mean, I don't recall an attorney general going that far out to act as a public relations person for a president in a case, of this significance. I mean, it's really disgraceful, and it's. I'm a little bit disappointed with Rod Rosenstein, who stood there as well. I mean, he knows better. This is not the way you do it. And plus, the fact is, they withheld the report so nobody could ask them any real questions. And so I find it embarrassing for the Attorney General to do that type of stuff and to come off as so self-important and with so much credibility that he pretends to have. And I think he's got very little. So
go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to say, Donald Trump got the attorney general he wanted all along. I mean, one of the narratives.
Apparently, this is a condition of keeping that job.
One of the narratives in this report is, how angry he was at Jeff Sessions for doing what used to be considered the normal thing, which was to recuse yourself when you have a conflict of interest in something like this. Jeff Sessions also, God, who ever thought we could find somebody who would make Jeff Sessions look honorable and good by comparison? But, Sessions also did his job as though he worked for the American people and not the Trump organization, which is who Bill Barr apparently works for.
Which has always sort of been the balancing act for the attorney general,
right?
In any administration.
Of course.
But this really came to, I guess, the public's consciousness
never been tested
back in the
like
Watergate.
This.
Well, the Watergate era was the first time it really was, and of course we saw the attorney general in that instance, for the most part, at least one of them, do the right thing in the Nixon administration. This time around, this is your next shot at attorney general. You find a guy that's going to basically toe the line for you, because, and the thing is, what Sessions did wasn't even that bad. He just said, look, I'm going to be questioned about this. I cannot be a part of it.
Right.
Rod Rosenstein, by all accounts, did what he was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Follow the law. And I have to give Rod Rosenstein credit for one thing. There was one section in the reading yesterday where the president wanted to have a press conference to say that he was not a subject of the investigation. And Rosenstein said a press conference is a bad idea because I'd have to tell the truth. And so, I mean, I thought that was
good humor in Washington there.
A little dry wit.
But the one thing that we figured out is that it was people like that that kept the president from getting in trouble. Sure. Don McGahn saying, I'm not going to fire. I'm not going to fire Bob Mueller. I'm not going to do it.
Every time I open my laptop to read a newspaper or read an actual ink on paper newspaper, which I still subscribe to, I feel like Alice just falling down the rabbit hole. I mean, we're through so many looking glasses now. I mean, when I saw that lineup of Rosenstein and Barr and
the bearded man,
the bearded guy,
O'Callahan, I think is his name. Yeah.
I thought, someday there's going to be a poster with these guys on it, right. And they're going to be the good Germans or whatever they are. Right. I mean, who knows?
Have little bubbles coming, really thinking, oh my God,
why am I standing here?
And we have these people who are working for this administration, which is basically like an ongoing criminal conspiracy now, and we're ranking them in order of loathsomeness and making the least loathsome into these heroes because they somehow stopped the president from doing something that was even worse than what he was already doing. So,
Well, and what's clear when you read through this, well, there's a couple things we'll get to fake news in just a moment because I think that's important. But the fact is he wanted to do things that would have been definitely illegal.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been clear obstruction of justice and not even Bob Mueller, given the constraints that he admitted he was working under, that they were not going to issue any sort of charges against a sitting president. He said he was working from that framework from day one, which I think surprised some people.
Right.
But he wouldn't have been able to ignore that.
No.
Had indeed they followed through and Don McGahn had fired Bob Mueller.
Right.
I mean, that would have just been,
chaos.
Chaos is the right word for it. But I love that McGahn was taking notes. Here's one of my other favorite parts of my reading from last night. I was up way too late, by the way.
Right.
Donald Trump apparently in a meeting asks him, "Why are you taking all these notes? Never seen an attorney take notes." And McGahn's answer was, "Because I'm a real attorney."
I'm reminded of a scene from The Wire, but it has a very big obscenity in the middle of it, so I don't dare dare quote it. But
well, the president's already said it.
Fans of The Wire have actually seen this one, but I won't bring it up. It's too much of a diversion.
Well, because we're nothing without diversions on this program.
Yeah, exactly. But we just before the camera went on, we said something about how if Bill Clinton goes down in history as the man who introduced oral sex to America's dinner table, depending on whether the TV was on, Donald Trump will be the guy who actually said the expletives out loud. I mean, I saw the F word on the front page of the New York Times.
Yep.
The ink on paper front page of the New York Times today. I think we just saw
Isn't
bullshit
it
on the Washington Post.
On the Twitter.
Yeah. And on the Twitter. Right. So.
Yeah, the president doubling down this morning saying that this is all trumped up, all made up stories. But like I said, the one thing that we learned yesterday was that all the reporting,
it was sound.
it was good.
Those
and it was
were good
accurate.
stories.
And Bob Mueller's like, yeah, we checked it out. This stuff's good.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
with the exception of that one piece that he pushed back on.
The BuzzFeed story?
The BuzzFeed story
But there
about
was
him
one part of that
lie.
story. One part of that story
What was that?
was incorrect, but most of it was actually accurate.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm talking about, that was the one where Mueller said, he actually issued a statement, which he had not done.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, you're right. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's funny on Fox, you see all these stories yesterday. Well, now we can get to the bottom of why this investigation even took place.
Right.
And you're like, it's pretty
Expect
obvious.
that
There's
narrative
good
to
stuff.
continue. Expect that narrative to continue.
Of course it
because,
will.
I mean, this is what This is the corrosive effect of the media bubbles. We're no longer agreeing on a set of facts anymore. I mean, it used to be everyone had one set of facts and you could have different opinions about it or different takes on what the facts mean. Now we just have different facts entirely. Two different sets.
Last night, I spent some time surfing around watching some different things, and I actually spent time watching Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham on Fox News last night.
Wow.
And it was amazing that was the whole thing. We're so excited because now we're going to shed light on this great conspiracy and this
Right, the FISA warrant,
the coup attempt. They called it a coup attempt.
Coup attempt, yeah. That's not
the
dangerous at all.
The spying on the campaign. There were legitimate reasons for the FBI to look into that type of stuff.
The Australian government came out yesterday and said, "Yeah, it was us. We got wind of this, and we're the ones that that told them about it." So at least somebody in government somewhere did the right thing when it came to these contacts.
Australia's
that
a
were
long
being
way
made.
from here, though. But that is to say to use that kind of language, coup, enemy of the people, whatever. It's dangerous. I mean, somebody is going to pick up a gun and start dealing with this at some point. I think that's what I fear anyway.
Well, what was laid bare though is that this is a president who is paranoid.
Oh God!
When your first reaction, when your first reaction is
this guy,
hey, you're under investigation. Your first reaction is, this is the end of my presidency. I'm fucked. I mean,
that's not paranoia. That's realism.
Well,
he's thinking, oh my God, what are they going to uncover?
Well, and that's the whole thing. There's a lot of stuff that is still to be uncovered that was redacted from this report.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him paranoid. I mean, the press is clearly scrutinizing him. Now Congress
would be a better
so
word, maybe.
yeah, so I think
fearful.
I mean, he's a narcissist. I mean, in the end, a narcissist loves it that the world revolves around him and or her. And in this case, he loves it. And then the bottom line is, the ratings are good. I mean, it's all about the ratings, and the man is pulling in the ratings.
Well, the interesting thing about this, though, is, I mean, there were 10 different instances of possible obstruction of justice that Bob Mueller said, hey, look, if we could have cleared him, we would have. We couldn't.
Right.
And so that gives, I think it gives an opening to the Democrats just to keep looking, to keep the story alive for a while. I don't think they're going to go for impeachment unless they discover something, or there's something that comes out of maybe the Southern District of New York.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if there's criminal
it's too
charges,
close to the election.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, by the time it drags out, I mean, what gets done in government, I mean, when these things get unleashed, nothing gets done at all. And even the Mueller report, I think, has slowed down the progress of what should be done here. So I think the wisdom is probably not to, unless there's something more out there. I mean, look, there's no question we have a president who lies, who's a serial liar. We have a president who has no respect for the system. So we accept that. But the American people, I think people are right when they say, it was adjudicated during the election, and people decided we don't care. The guy's a liar. The guy's deceptive.
A minority of the people decided.
Yeah, right. Not the majority, but
Yeah, but at the same time, if the Democrats can't spin this into some sort of victory next time around, I mean, then that's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Right.
Because they do have now, even if they don't go the impeachment route, which, again, I'm not sure politically that's the smart thing to do, but they can drag out these investigations and keep the slow drip of just negative stuff coming for a long time. And it seems to me that they're building a nice little case against Donald Trump as being continuing to be the president of the United States.
I think it's clear that, I mean, from what I recall reading in the report, Mueller was basically saying, on the obstruction, he's saying, for us to make that decision as a prosecutor, basically we'd have to do a little bit more investigating. We'd have to, build a strong case, and that didn't seem to be their goal. But it seems like it's there. It's there for the taking, and even in the collusion stuff or the conspiracy, they basically just said, we talked to people who were not being truthful. We talked to people who were, hiding documents through encrypted, messages and stuff. So it's not like he didn't say, oh, look, the guy's clean. This is so ridiculous. Why did we even look at it?
I was texting with Barb McQuaid yesterday. She and I were texting back and forth a little bit as this was all unfolding. We were reading through it yesterday. And, of course, she was probably on MSNBC about every 15 minutes yesterday. Yeah. But I said, look, this doesn't seem to fit my definition of full cooperation, because that's one of the things that Bill Barr said in that press conference. They fully cooperated. Well, the president says, I can't recall how many, couple of dozen times in his written answers.
Sure.
Refuses to testify. That is not exactly full cooperation. And again, so many people lied throughout the course of their interviews with the FBI. It seems to me that this was less than full cooperation here, which is another reason to give Bill Barr some crap.
And the use of the encrypted messaging apps. I mean, where is all of this outrage over, Hillary using a private email server? I mean, where are those people now? Oh my God, how could she possibly have done that? It's like, well, what? Look at what these folks are doing, or the kind that either encrypted or the kind that don't keep, where it goes into the ether. And so forth.
Exactly. So but the clear winner in all this was Vladimir Putin, because
laughing his ass off back in Moscow.
One of the things that this report made very, very clear is that they had a vested interest in seeing Donald Trump become the next president of the United States for a number of reasons. Because you need one rich guy to understand the troubles that the oligarchs are dealing with the Magnitsky Act and all the other things that they're dealing with when it comes to having their assets frozen in the West. They don't like that very much, and it was clear. It was clear that they thought that they had an audience with him. And maybe...
they do.
My favorite part about the whole thing was the fact that, and I think this was the headline from was it the New Yorker yesterday, or Vanity Fair? Vanity Fair, Donald Trump Jr., too stupid to know he's breaking the law. Just like, taking that meeting. Yeah. But they definitely knew what they were doing. And while there may not have been a conspiracy, there certainly were some longing glances across the room.
Oh, God, yes.
And a lot of flirtation going on there.
Yeah.
Well, Jim Comey said maybe a couple weeks ago, I think he was being interviewed on CNN, and he said, well, how is it not obstruction when he fires me? And he tells everyone he fired me to derail the investigation. How is that not?
How is that not obstruction?
How is
Right.
that not obstruction?
Well,
I mean,
and Lester Holt now
Yeah.
forever
Yeah.
in U.S. history because he's the guy that got that out of him.
Yeah, I told
In
him.
that
I said
interview.
we're gonna be
It's
in much
actually in the
clearer.
Mueller report.
Yeah, exactly.
right. So I don't know. It seems, and it's funny. William Barr, I mean, should be just ashamed of himself, but apparently there's no shame when you're serving
He's a mafia
man.
lawyer now. That's what he is.
Yeah,
He's a mafia lawyer.
that's a good way of putting it. I felt
For a
like when
crime
Michael
family.
Cohen was testifying in Congress, I felt it was like Sammy the Bull testifying against John Gotti. It was like, two guys, not the most reputable guys in the world, one dissing the other.
One of them's lying.
Yeah,
You
one
got to
of
figure
them's
out which
lying,
one.
right.
And it seems like that was a whole lot of what Mueller had to do, was figure out which one of these people is lying, which one is not.
Right.
And the Comey stuff, he said, hey, we found Comey to be quite credible in his recollections of what happened
Right,
in that
sure.
meeting
And
compared to the
Comey is a
president.
note taker too, as I recall.
Well,
that was one of the things they
that's one
said
of the
about
things
him.
he tweeted this
is
morning.
that
He
he
takes
is
notes.
Yeah, exactly. And is that Comey loves to take notes, and Mueller's a big note taker too. So I mean, they both learned
Well,
that.
the president tweeted this morning, beware of people who take notes.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, I'm sorry,
Right.
they were only appeared when they were needed. Well, yeah, that's why you take notes, so you have something to go back to when somebody's asking you questions about potentially illegal activities. Let me check my notes. I have a bunch of them. That's why people take notes.
Yes.
To cover their asses, and that's
Yeah.
exactly what they should have done.
I think it's clear. I mean, I think Jim Comey made some missteps along the way while he was the
Absolutely.
FBI director. In fact, I wrote a column once for TickleTheWire.com, and basically the headline was Jim Comey, a prisoner of his Boy Scout image. And I think, even the fact that Jim Comey had sent that letter when the Justice Department said do not, he had cover. He could have told Congress if they said, why did you not send us, notify us? And he would have said, I wanted to, but my bosses at the DOJ said not to, that we didn't want to interfere with the election. It was up to me. I would have sent it. But that being said, he's an honest man. And I don't think you're going to find anyone, accusing him of not being an honest man, contrary to Trump, who is not a particularly honest person. And I think that's clear. And it's not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of fact. I mean, if you go to the Washington Post, the fact checker, I mean, I don't know
he tells-
how many
Oh,
lies
that's
is
lies.
up
That's
to.
all lies.
He lies with every.
Fact
he
checkers-
lies
Lies
with,
about
fact
the
checkers are
lies.
lying.
with
Lying about the
every
lies.
breath he takes.
Yeah.
I feel like as a person, I'm a little bit of a Russophile. I took some Russian language in high school and college, and
Communist.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was the Cold War. It seemed like it was better. It was a better skill than
Just
French.
in case we got captured.
Yeah, just in case.
You know how to
exactly.
communicate on behalf of your family. I'll talk to them. That's okay. I'll take
Ya
care of this.
journalistka. Anyway, I feel like I lost the thread of when did the right wing suddenly become so fond of Russia?
I don't
I mean,
know.
was it, what was the turning point? Was it the election of Putin, the election of Vladimir Putin?
It's like the ghost of Ronald Reagan no longer exists to
I
them.
know. I mean,
you know.
I grew up. I grew up.
Mr.
They were the
Gorbachev, tear
absolutely
down this
the
wall.
enemy. Yeah,
Right.
and I remember when I was living in Indiana, the Eagle Forum used to have screenings of Red Dawn to raise money. It was
Because we
hilarious.
live here.
Exactly.
Come on now. One of my
It
favorite
was-
movies.
It was
I'm just
hilarious.
kidding.
So-
Hey, well, some comments coming in online. We are streaming this live, of course.
Okay.
All right.
And
Yay
so we
for
got one.
live.
Christian chimed in and said, Trump and Russia are working to pull the EU apart. Brexit, part of this whole deal, too. So that's kind of
That's
interesting.
very true, I think.
And then we have Rob, who says, this week is so rough, the photo in the background is crooked. Ha!
We did that on
On
purpose.
purpose, Rob.
The
On
Leaning
purpose. It
Tower.
is Paris. It is Paris. So,
is Paris.
we
Paris had a rough
we
week.
change communities every once in a while. So
Let's try to accommodate Rob here.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well, we have
No,
to do
you
it
got to
this
push
way.
it that way.
There we go.
And then you have to get the iPhone out and use the level function.
Right.
in
All
the
right.
app.
Well,
All right.
we're going to take just a very short break. And for those of you watching online, it's not going to be a very long break, but I do need to separate this out for the podcast. So we're going to take a short break. We'll be
And
right
by-
back. This is the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit, the week that was.
Stick around.
And we shall continue on.
Okay.
All right, welcome back to the Craig Fahle Show on Deadline Detroit. Nancy Derringer is here with me, Alan Lengel from Deadline, and we're talking about the week that was. Well, the week that is yet to come. Part of the week that is yet to come, of course, is the news that Steve Yzerman is returning to the Detroit Red Wings, which is a big deal. And from my old radio days when I was an anchor, I used to call them the Detroit Red Wings, of course, in deference to Hockey Night in Canada and the way that the Canadians like to pronounce Detroit.
Yeah.
I got yelled at for that a bunch of times. But Steve Yzerman coming back to the Wings is a big deal. He's had a lot of success in Tampa as the general manager. This news was greeted very, very warmly.
Hosannas. Hosannas.
Detroit sports needs a hero, and it seems we're lacking those these days. I mean, we're watching, I don't know if you guys have watched the Pistons.
They have not been good in the playoffs
It's been painful to watch, and maybe they'll do better at home. I mean, our team...
I don't think they can stop the Greek Freaks.
But Blake, I don't know, is Blake Griffin going to play, or is that still a question mark?
At this point in time, why?
Yeah. Well,
you'll lose.
Why are you looking at me? I have no idea.
A little dignity.
Nancy loves the sports balls.
We'd like a little dignity for, might even bring back Bill Lambier if we have to.
That's right. That's absolutely right. But no, Steve Yzerman coming back to the Wings is a big deal.
Sure.
And the fact that Ken Holland is willing to share that office in some capacity it's not a small thing to do. He's been a very successful general manager for this franchise for a long time. It's got to be somewhat uncomfortable for Chris Ilitch to do this to Ken Holland, but I have a feeling Ken Holland is going to get snapped up by somebody else, so that maybe the new Seattle franchise, somebody's going to take a chance on him given his track record.
And as I recall from reading, I believe it was Deadline Detroit, we had a piece by Paul Harris early in the season, the hockey season, that said this is not going to be a top performing team for a while, but they're young and promising. And so maybe that's the kind of raw material that somebody like Steve Yzerman can work with. And that is the extent of what I can intelligently say about hockey.
He's been waiting in the wings, so to speak, for quite a while. I mean, this has been in the making, I think, for years.
But I think the Wings were smart, though. I mean, in letting him, instead of keeping him there, let him go somewhere else. See how other franchises work. Build it yourself. See what you can do. And he has been incredibly successful. I mean, Tampa Bay, of course, just got swept out of the playoffs in the first round after posting a record-setting season.
Right.
But still,
who did they lose to?
I just watched the whole series, and they lost to the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
so,
right.
It's Columbus.
Were they like an 8th seed or something? Yeah.
So the 1 seed lost to the 8. I mean, they 62 wins this year, which tied the Red Wings record.
Playoff hockey
from
is
the
different
Yzerman years.
Playoff hockey is different than regular season
playoff
hockey. Playoff hockey is rough.
It's the best.
It's
the best
fast,
of all the playoffs.
It's just more intense.
Hockey is the most fun to watch.
And so in the regular season, if you're great, it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be great in the playoffs.
Well, I just, I feel a little bit bad for him, though, because the expectations are going to be so high for him. Given what he was able to accomplish as a player, what he was able to accomplish in Tampa Bay, I think fans are going to be somewhat impatient for him to turn this into a playoff contender once again. But anyway,
Washington used to do that with Dan Snyder would bring in the old coaches from way back, and it didn't work. But I think in this case it's probably going to work. I mean, Yzerman I think is a skilled manager and been a smart player.
Now Dan Snyder, though, I mean.
Dan Snyder was, I think, might have been voted the least popular sports owner of any sports team.
Yeah, he is not well liked.
No. Not a great guy.
Well, let's get closer to home. Let's stay out of D.C. for a little bit, because this is something that is actually brewing. If we're talking about investigations, it now appears that the FBI is getting involved in this investigation into what's going on in Macomb County.
Well, I think the state police.
Well, state police did the raid, but there was a story yesterday following up said that the FBI has taken up the mantle of this investigation. And again, doesn't mean anything necessarily bad happened. The FBI is going to look at it. They're going to take a look, but it's never comfortable. I know.
No.
An organization I worked for went through this, and it's one of those things that it's just not comfortable, and everybody's mind all of a sudden changes about your organization instantly.
Sure,
something bad is happening there, or else they wouldn't be looking.
Right. I think investigations like this, part of the core is whether anyone financially benefited.
Sure.
I mean, it looks like money may have been misappropriated, but it's like it went to the Kiwanis Club. Or,
brief the people who have not been following this story what the investigation is. It's the use of prosecutor's use of asset forfeiture funds, which is the money and goods that are seized from as the fruit of illegal activities. So if your drug buy gets busted, the cops keep the cash.
Well,
that
and
you're
asset
busted
forfeiture
with.
is something that has been really on the minds of state legislators
Yes,
recently and other
because
folks
it's been
as well.
abused.
It has been abused,
but
you know,
in a different way than what they're looking into.
True.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that people are really starting to turn on this notion of the government being able to take people's property when they
Right.
haven't been convicted of a crime.
Well, it made sense when it was the Miami police against the Cali cartel or whatever, and they could roll up undercover in brand new Maseratis and so forth, and and what are the cops going to come in with, a 4-door Impala? So if you could seize a drug dealer's tricked out Mustang, you had a better chance of fighting this war. But what it turned into was this abuse, first of all, by police in seizing assets that they arguably did not have any right to, including those of people who were never convicted of a crime. And then at the other end, which is what's happening in Macomb County, which is the spending of it. It's supposed to be spent on law enforcement activities. But what the Macomb prosecutor is suspected of doing is using it, as I think our columnist Chad Selweski, who covers Macomb County
like nobody
they
else.
do, said... is being the Santa
Thankless
Claus.
job, Chad.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Being the Santa
As a
Claus.
slush fund, basically.
Santa Claus of Macomb County.
Yeah,
Well-
and using it as a slush fund to curry favor with all these organizations, these
Right.
church organizations, these fraternal organizations, and in the end, it's going to be who's if he were to be charged criminally, you can imagine the case that they have to bring before the jury is like, this man took this money and gave some to the Kiwanis Club and to the church and that.
Right.
And it could be a tough, and I think that would be a consideration whether to criminally charge in a case like that.
Yeah, and well, it'll be interesting to see what they find out. But the interesting thing about it is how many people from both sides of the aisle are lining up to say, "Hey, we've at least got some questions." I mean, of course, you got Mark Hackel, who technically is a Democrat, who has been asking about
Technically.
this. Leon Drolet, of course, who's a Republican,
Republican.
who's asking about this, and you've got Treasurer Larry Rocca, excuse me, who's asking. And I mean, so it seems like there's a lot of different people at the county level who are saying, hey, there at least needs to be some more oversight. And they did make some changes to the oversight as soon as the questions were brought, but it may have been a little late once they did this. But we'll see what happens. But there's never a dull moment in Macomb County.
Never.
It's a fun county. There's a lot going on. We haven't heard from Mayor Fouts in it's been 2 weeks now.
Well,
Really?
2
Keeping
weeks.
a low profile, man.
It just who's got the recorder? I mean, I think that's what keeps Fouts up at night is who's tape recording me. Damn it.
Yeah,
It's
right.
like I just said something offensive today. Somebody probably recorded it because
He probably has something on his door now that says no phones, recording devices.
Check
entirely possible.
Yes.
Check your stuff at the door.
Well, let's wrap up this week with another story that I think is kind of interesting. That might actually lead to some real change in Michigan. The ACLU, we have this on Deadline Detroit. If you want some more information, go to deadlinedetroit.org on all these stories that we're talking about, basically.
Except for the Mueller report.
.com. I'm so used to being in a nonprofit, I say .org.
Yeah.
Deadlinedetroit.com.
.com.
The story about the ACLU suing 36th District Court over cash bail, Nancy, I think this is it's about time we had this discussion because what happens is you get arraigned. Oftentimes, ACLU is arguing that an attorney won't even be there. They happen over videotape while you're sitting in jail. The judge will say, okay, here's your bail, here's your bond. And if you don't have it, you just wait in jail till your
Sit in
trial
jail.
starts.
Right. To a poor person, $500 might as well be $5 million.
Exactly.
And, it's like these little things pile up and they conspire to keep people, like you said, you'll sit in jail. And if you're sitting in jail, you will lose your job. You won't be able to take care of your kids. It touches off a cascade of disaster for low-income people over something that might not even be a particularly, I mean, it may well be a nonviolent.
It could be a DUI.
Yeah, it could be a nonviolent offense.
Minor drug possession or whatever. And it's funny that the government is willing to pay for public defenders at the federal level, at the state level, and they want people to be represented fairly and treated like everyone else who can't afford it. At the same time, there should be some type of fund for bonds in situations like this, so people are treated fairly. Well, just because if they're impoverished,
and people are like, well, what about bail bonds? But if you don't have any assets,
Yeah,
they're
bail
not gonna-
bonds have to be secured, by
collateralized.
something.
You know,
Right.
I mean, so
you can't
so
put your
there's-
shopping basket up for as collateral.
Exactly. And so I think that there's going to be a serious look at this. And of course, the governor's office, along with the attorney general and some Republican legislators, they're going to work on a joint task force to look at some better ways to deal with this. So I think the ACLU suit brought some light to this issue. But it is something that I think a legislative fix could make a big difference on. And frankly, the other thing that I've been railing about for years is that we've got to do a better job with public defender system in this state. There needs to be more people that give their time to this one, and nobody should go to an arraignment without representation.
Right.
No,
I agree.
you're right.
It just
I'll
shouldn't
tell you,
happen.
at the federal level, the federal defender's office is as good as any. I mean, if you were going to get a pay for an attorney or get a federal defender, the attorneys there are very high caliber. So, I mean, in that way, it's fair.
In select pockets, in select cities, in certain places, you can get a really great lawyer through public aid, but not here. I mean,
Well, here on the federal level, you can.
on the federal level, right? But I mean, I don't know about Michigan. I honestly don't know enough about how Michigan funds its public defenders, but in the second shout out to Columbus, Ohio, in this particular podcast, that's where I grew up, and their Franklin County public defenders were outstanding. So,
Well, let's wrap up with this.
Okay.
Something a little bit less serious, but then again, it could be really serious. We don't know. Speaking of Macomb County, a white milky substance found flowing in a Macomb County drain. We don't know what that is. Does it have anything to do with the new golden butthole cookies that are out there right now?
man,
I had to go there. Come on. It just it never ends.
That's a story
Poor
that's done
Candace
great.
Miller.
It's done great for us. The golden butthole.
Anything
know.
about that? People are just they're drawn.
Right.
It's like
Drawn to
everybody
the
has
halo.
a 12-year-old boy living inside them.
Well, I think it's also
That's
it's
right.
like there's so much serious news. Like
know.
the golden butthole.
Yeah,
A little
finally
bit-
the golden butthole.
little
It is.
relief.
It is a little lighter.
Exactly.
And one thing that I just want to end on, the closest thing we've had to regional cooperation on transit in a long time, a unified
fair system.
fare system for DDOT and SMART. Nice job, everybody, finally getting together and figuring that out. It's a small step, but it could be a giant leap for transit kind.
As a bus
in this
rider,
region.
I
I'm a bus
really
rider too.
appreciate
So
it. Yeah.
Well,
you know,
let's push for more public transportation here. It's still inadequate.
Well, we have been doing a nice series about all the different options around town.
That's
and so
right.
Michael Lucido, who engineered our broadcast today, by the way, thank you, Michael.
Sitting
has
just
been
out of
there on
camera
the
range.
People Mover. We talked to cabbies. We're going to get
Yeah.
out there on the Q line and talk to some of those folks pretty
Right,
soon.
sure.
And we'll be doing some tales, maybe from the 620. We'll see. I might see
Or
if
the
I can smuggle
31.
a
That's mine.
recorder on there.
I'm a DDOT girl, at least in
Yeah.
the summertime when I can bike
I
to
take the Jefferson sometimes. It was
Yeah.
at the 4, I believe.
Yeah,
but,
the 4
you know,
and the 31,
Hey,
right?
DDOT,
side.
huge improvements over the last couple of
Very
years.
much so.
You know,
I
just
really,
want to put that
was
out
like
there.
the
They're
surprise of last summer.
they're trying to be serious about their public transportation, but we need to have a system wide. I mean,
more.
you need to be able to take a bus from downtown Detroit to downtown Pontiac.
Well, and
Yeah.
you know what? I'm sorry. If there's you should be able to stop in any city you want.
Right.
I mean, not that
No.
I want
Right.
to
You
go to
should be able to
Livonia
go-
necessarily, but you know what?
The
I mean, I
opting
should
out,
have
the
option.
opting out has to end.
You should be able to go from West Bloomfield to Grosse Pointe.
And
take
it
a
shouldn't be
bus.
that difficult.
Yeah.
It should just go across, like, go across 8 Mile and hop up Northwestern, whatever. But you
right.
can't do that right now. I tried to plan it out when I was working out in West Bloomfield to see if I could do it. It was going to take 4 hours.
Oh, yeah,
Wow.
right.
And I'll
That's
tell you
obscene.
what, a lot of times we hear complaints in Macomb, and people say, well, the Macomb people, why should we pay for public
so
transportation?
tired of that
But
attitude.
the
Ugh.
problem is when you don't have adequate public transportation, of course, people aren't going to migrate to that. But if you really had good public transportation, the guy with the suit may get on the bus. Like in D.C., people in
Everybody
suits
takes it.
ride the bus.
Sure.
People of all ilks
New
ride
York
the bus.
City,
Yeah.
Although, in my previous bus incarnation, there were judges that would ride on the bus with me every day. They were, from the east side, it's not bad. Nancy, you and I both live over
the
that
east
way.
Side,
Get
the east
downtown,
side
no
is
problem.
like and the Grosse Points are one of the few suburbs that you can live in and actually make bus commuting work. And
Do you guys have any signal, like kind of East Side signs.
Sorry, no.
East Side was always trying to be tougher than the West Side.
Right.
We're West Side.
Exactly right.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap up this week, the week that was, and of course we'll be back next week with more conversation about this. I have a feeling that there's more to come out of Washington. This is not going to end anytime soon, but obviously keep in touch. Nice comments that came in online today. Appreciate that very much. Let me know what you want us to talk about. If there's something that you think we need to get to, let me know. You can always send me an email as well. It's thecraigfahleyshow@gmail.com. And of course, leave comments right here on Facebook. And we'll stream this to multiple locations. We'll get this worked out. Anyway, thanks everybody for checking it out. Nancy, thank you very much. Alan, appreciate it.
Thanks.
And again,
Thanks
check
for
out
having me.
DeadlineDetroit.com. Every day we update it constantly. There's always new stuff out there, new features that we're adding as well. So we're looking forward to seeing you there. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you Monday.